What's up, guys? Tim Little. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today's video, we are talking about 3 common mistakes that bass anglers make during fall fishing. So hopefully you guys have been following along. Last few videos or so, we've talked about kind of that summer to fall transition. And hopefully for the most part of the country, you're kind of through that tough transition. Maybe not. It depends on weather, it depends on, water temps, water levels, all that good stuff. But hopefully, the best is coming, right? Because we've talked about that fall transition. We've talked about how tough it is to stay on those fish, how to pattern those fish. But today's video, I want to talk about 3 common mistakes that a lot of anglers make, including myself, about fishing during the fall, right? What comes after that fall transition. And if you guys follow the channel, you guys know that we do several instructional videos a week, and we also have a fishing video or 2 a week, different platforms, all that good stuff. But more importantly, the fishing stuff. So you guys, recently I had my last couple videos, I went to the same body of water. The first time was true struggle bus, right? It was a grinder. It was that transition. It was that September kind of sucky time of fishing, and you guys battled through it with me. We caught lots of fish. They were smaller fish. I wouldn't even say lots. We caught some fish, I don't know, 8 or 10 or so, but they were smaller, and it was just one of those grinder deals. It was that September kind of blah fishing. But then a couple weeks later went by, and ended up catching some really, really nice fish. And that kind of led me to do this video, because I can kind of teach off of those 2 videos, right? That first video, I had a downsize. I was throwing smaller baits, catch them on the karashi, catch them on some smaller stuff, and catching smaller fish. I was drop shotting. It was just a grinder of a fishing video. And then I went back and I focused on hard cover, hard structure that we talk about, right? As those fish kind of pull out of the grass or they move to the shallows chasing bait, they pull to that hard cover. And if you guys saw, I caught a really good one. Well, I lost a really good one up in next to a tree, but I caught several good ones on either top water or the free rig up against hard cover. But that leads me to the first mistake that a lot of anglers make, including myself. So let's talk about that scenario. So here I am, I'm stoked, I'm catching fish, I'm catching big fish, good quality fish for this fishery, as opposed to the time I'd been fishing it before, right? So that is my first mistake moving forward. If I were going to go back to that lake, I would most likely start on that same pattern, going and flipping and pitching hard structure up in the shallows, looking for that largemouth bite. But the mistake, the grind could possibly be over, right? Yeah, I didn't catch a bunch of fish that day. I caught some really nice fish. I think I caught maybe 8 or 10. I can't remember exactly, but a really good limit. Some really nice 3+. I broke that 5 pounder off. Had a couple 4s, I believe. But if I was going back to that lake, I might not necessarily realize that the grind was over. And I think that a lot of anglers make that mistake too. So in that video, I talked about giving yourself time limits and fishing certain patterns for a limited amount of time so you don't miss what could be going on. And bingo, that's my #1 mistake. The grind could be over. It could be lights out. But because we fish that history, right? We fish those previous locations for previous baits. I might roll up to that lake, pick up that free rig, and go to work and pitch and flip to every hard piece of cover I see, not knowing that in the backs of every cut, there's just bombs going off super shallow, and I've completely missed one of the most epic topwater bites of the entire year, right? So that is my #1 mistake, not realizing that the grind could be over. Sticking with those same patterns that maybe you found during that fall transition, during those grind days, and not leaving your comfort and going and checking again to see if we're a full-blown fall, because that can be some of the most epic fishing time of the entire season. Those fish are up shallow. They might be in open water chasing bait, but either way, they're chasing bait. They're active. They're actively feeding, and you can have a ball just catching a ton of really quality fish. So make sure, if you're going back to a lake that you've just recently fished through those grinder days, through that fall transition, that summer to fall transition, that September funk, don't be narrow-minded or narrow-sighted and go fish your recently found patterns. Still keep that open mind and go run a bunch of pockets, secondary points, little inlets, looking for those fish that may have corralled that bait up shallow, and catch them on a fluke, on a topwater, on a glide bait, you know, basically whatever you want, quick moving reaction baits. But again, that's my number one mistake. Number two, I knew that bass go shallow, right? But moving out here to East Tennessee, fishing the Tennessee River, we get a lot of water fluctuation, but I didn't realize how shallow bass go. So my number two mistake is not going shallow enough, not realizing how shallow these fish go. You know, it is so easy, myself included, it is so easy. I can think of so many epic fall topwater bites I've got on with this guy right here, catching giant smallmouth and largemouth and spotted bass over 150 feet of water. But these fish are just in open water chasing, but I didn't realize how shallow, I'm talking inches, how shallow these fish can really go. And I'm talking like 6 inches, 8 inches, something like that, where these fish, oh, sorry, someone's coming in here turning around with a squeaky belt. These fish go extremely shallow. Like I said, 6, 8 inches. You know, that's, again, we're talking small topwaters, right? We're talking square bills, little underspins, but these fish go extremely shallow. So it's really easy to completely miss the giant school of fish that are up in less than 1.5 feet of water, pushing bait into 6, 8 inches of water, right? Like I said earlier, I can't tell you how many epic bites I got on in October, right? In the fall, with a vertical jigging spoon in 60, 80 feet, right? Big balls of bait being corralled by open water pelagic fish, you know, throwing a vertical spoon, or like I said, topwater out there, open water, over 150 feet of water. And on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, those fish up super shallow, pushing that, finding that hard shoreline and pushing that bait all the way up in less than 1 foot of water. Guys, it is crazy. I've seen so many dorsal fins, bass just coming up and just sharking, you know, big gizzard shad or threadfin shad. But it can be really easy to pull into your favorite bay and just not go far enough, not go shallow enough. Guys, this time of the year, I can tell you multiple times in the boat, I've got in the back of a bay or a little inlet or something like that next to a creek channel, but the lake pops up, gets super shallow, my trolling motor's hitting, I've raised it all the way up, and I'm literally casting as far back as I can, and I can't reach the blowups. They're literally shallower than I can actually get in the boat. There's been times where I've had to beach the boat, get on shore, and walk down and throw a topwater and catch like 4 and 5 pounders. It's crazy how shallow these fish will actually go. So the next time you're out and you're checking the back of a bay to see if those fish are in there, check the very, very back. You know, one instance in particular, I remember Matt and I were fishing a lake out west, Berryessa. Same day, we're out up on the north end of the lake, and we're throwing vertical spoons, and we're catching 2 to 4 pound spotted bass and smallmouth. Then we go to a big bay in the back where there's some flooded timber and stuff, some wood. And we're trying to get back there, and then we see bombs going off another 100, 150 yards back past where we actually think the fish are. And we work our way back there, and eventually we get back there trying to navigate the shallow waters, and we absolutely obliterate them, largemouth, on topwaters and a fluke, a weedless fluke. So 2 complete opposite ends, 2 completely different bites, right? So it's really easy to miss one or the other, but more often than not, guys will miss that extremely shallow bite. Fish can go extremely shallow. It's unbelievable how shallow they go. I continually get amazed on, you know, out here fishing, throwing a lipless crankbait or something, thrown up in like basically on the bank, inches of water, and making one hop and just getting pounded, right? They just hammer it. These fish go extremely shallow. They corral that bait up there against the shoreline. Again, we're looking for little pockets, little areas they can really congregate those fish in, and they'll sit there in like a wall and just hold them there, and they will blow up throughout the day, throughout the week, a couple weeks. They will hold those fish there. Okay, so that's my number 2 mistake. All right, so that's my first and second mistake. Number 3, I talked about this a little bit, maybe in like a transition mistake video, or maybe Matt talked about it. I can't remember yesterday, but talking about bait choices. Maybe it was my son, I don't know when it was, but month of October, 9 months, we're through the year, and these fish have been conditioned. They've been conditioned to a lot of things, a lot of common size baits, a lot of common sounding baits, looking baits, common actions of baits. And it's really, real important right now to be specific with your bait choices. And I think Matt talked about it in his video, talking about fishing the extremes. And I just wanted to kind of touch on that a little bit more. Now is the time to throw extreme size baits, right? The water's cooling down. These fish are active. They want to feed up. We have all winter long to downsize and throw little tiny baits, even though there are days here in the near future, and probably next week, that I'll have to downsize and throw bait finesse or throw a little underspin to match the hatch, right? We talk about that a lot, matching the actual bait fish size. But if you're looking for a big bait, this is an easy way, or something easy to do. It might not be easy on your shoulder or your arms, but picking up a big bait, right? The Chimera shad, that's that bait Sanity. Love that bait so much. Even if it's not a giant bait, maybe it's a giant bait for your fishery. Maybe it's just a traditional 168 size S-waver. You can see the size difference here, right? If I'm going out and I'm looking for a big bite, I'm throwing this guy, especially if there's gizzard shad in my lake. If I'm going out and I'm throwing an A-rig, I have all winter to throw our little micro rig. Now is the time to be throwing a full-size A-rig. Look at the size. This is the Tactical Flex. This is our micro. Those are little armor shads. Those are full-size, those 4.8 Kitex. But look at the size, the profile of this. I have all winter long to freeze my butt off and throw little finessey A-rigs. But right now, especially with rising water, muddy water, just these fish active, I can throw a full-size rig. You know, I don't throw a full-size rig a lot of the year. I definitely throw it in the fall. I throw it in spring, right? When those bait fish, you know, out in California, you had the hitch on Clear Lake. Here you got the gizzard shad. I will throw a full-size A-rig, but a lot of times I will downsize. I will throw our mini. That's probably my favorite rig to throw throughout the year. It's a little downsized. It's a smaller profile. And then I have the micro. We have the micro that Matt and I designed a couple years ago for the smaller presentations, clear water, straight fluorocarbon, finesse fishing style A-rig right there. But extreme, be extreme in your bait choices. So I think guys get too comfortable fishing the same old stuff this time of the year. And granted, These fish have been fished for 9 months out of the year. They have seen a lot of A-rigs. They've seen a lot of micro or mini rigs. They've seen a lot of 4.5 to 5 inch swim baits, right? But I guarantee you they haven't seen a lot of big baits or giant baits or different sounding baits. It doesn't necessarily have to be the biggest bait in your tackle box. Maybe it's the loudest bait in your tackle box, or maybe it's the quietest topwater bait in your tackle box. Just be different. Go fish those extremes. As far as topwater fishing, like I said, you guys know that I love this bait. I love the Rover, the Vixen, you know, your spooks. This time of the year, again, going to that opposite end of the spectrum, I love throwing a silent topwater, like a popper, right? Or a little walking bait. I'll link some of my favorites down below in the video description. But, you know, forever for me, that Matt Shad, that Mega Bass, the Pop Max, that is the deal for me, right? But I'm going more subtle. Typically, I'm throwing a fast, chrome, flashy, loud, quick moving bait. But again, just like these other bait choices, just go a little different, or go the opposite end of the spectrum. You know, just fishing those subtle baits can be the difference of, you know, catching them or not catching them this time of the year. Sometimes, especially if you find yourself in that really shallow situation, having too much rattle or having too much sound can be overbearing for those shallow fish. So kind of mistake number 2 and mistake number 3, make sure you go shallow enough, check the backs, and then make sure you're fishing different baits that these fish haven't seen. But again, or heard. But again, make sure you're thinking about, if you do go super shallow, or you are typically fishing a really loud topwater bait or a square bill, try throwing a quiet one. Try throwing a silent bait, okay? Just little things like that to think about. So I hope that gives you guys some confidence. You know, I love fishing loud baits this time of the year. You guys typically when I do like a crankbait seminar or a square bill seminar, I'm talking about I feel like I catch bigger fish on silent square bills, like it kind of sneaks up to them and I just get those big fish to react better. This time of the year, I'm throwing a loud square bill. I love throwing the BTC 50, that little 50 size square bill by Demiki, but I can add a square bill in the arsenal that has a ton of rattle. So again, it's just fishing those extremes, no matter what you're talking about or which technique you're talking about, just being different, throwing bigger, right? We have all winter to throw small. So I would recommend, I mean, you can go small, you can go that extreme too, fish the 2 opposite ends of the spectrum, but we have all winter for that. So, so I highly recommend just being a little more picky when you're choosing your baits. So like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be a big glide bait. It doesn't have to be a glide bait at all, but when you're picking your top water, if you throw up your favorite top water you've thrown all year, guess what? These fish, even though I love this bait, that's that shower bill, the 105, I love this bait, but I might have to go with a silent top water, just something a little bit different. So extreme, yes, right? A silent top water. So that's all I'm saying. Be more specific with your bait choices, okay? So we'll link some of our favorite baits down below in the video description for this specific video. But as you're rigging your rods, as you're packing your tackle box, just be cognizant of that. Remember, be thinking that these fish, you know, they've learned a lot this year. They've learned a lot, you know, a lot of pressure. They've seen a lot of baits, so just be different, okay? So number 1, check for active fish. Maybe the grind, maybe that fall transition grind is over. Maybe you are full-blown fall fishing and it could be lights out. Number 2, if you're checking the backs of cuts, backs of coves, or you're going shallow, make sure you're truly going as shallow as you possibly can. Don't be afraid to get extra shallow. And then number 3, just be more specific. Be more, I don't know what the word is, but just analyze your bait choices this time of the year. Like I said, if you're typically throwing a loud topwater like a Vixen or a Rover or a Spook or a Shower Blows, go with a silent walking bait, or go with a bigger glide bait. If you're typically throwing, you know, a Waver, go with a bigger glide, or go with a full-size rig like I talked about. Guys, just think about it. All right, this is a great time to be out on the water. It's a great time to find those active fish. Again, we're covering water, we're fishing fast. You know, if we need to downsize, throw in your little square bills, your little whopper ploppers, your little underspins if you need to catch fish. But don't, just like that first mistake, don't get stuck just that pattern. Make sure you're checking other things. Make sure you're checking full-size swim baits, full-size rigs, top water, square bill, right? Guys, it's a great time to be out on the water. I hope this gives you a little bit of confidence. I know I always have to kind of, when I'm sitting in just rigging up rods and thinking about fishing the next day, I'm always thinking about what should I throw? What should I tie on? What could be different? What could I do different? What are these fish seen? I'm just always thinking about that stuff. So hopefully this gives you a little bit to chew on, to think about, and some confidence, because it is a great time to get out on the water. Guys, as always, thank you for watching. If you learned something from this video or you like this video, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you guys on the next video.